everybody. Welcome to Under the Arch Sports. I'm Eric Hobbs.
And I'm David Woldingen.
And basketball season is here, year two for Mizzou and the Dennis Gates era. So we're going to preview it for you here. But first, before we get into that, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, sign up for all the notifications for when we publish more content, and then follow us, like us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on X. It helps us out, guys. Okay. Year one, a resounding success, David, and it's got the excitement and enthusiasm and expectations back for Mizzou basketball.
Yeah, he pulled off a magic trick, if you will, with not only who he brought in with him from Cleveland State, but just hitting the transfer portal. And honestly, that's probably going to be the recipe again this year with Demoy Hodge and Kobe Brown both going into the NBA. Big shoes to fill.
That's the first question is how do you replace, two guys who are now in the NBA, and you cannot assume that any one person is going to fill each role. You can't assume Caleb Grill is going to be Demoy Hodge and Tamar Bates is going to be Kobe Brown, or Noah Carter is going to be Kobe Brown, or whatever. You have to assume a collective effort. And that's part of the reason that he got what looks like a small football team for a roster in terms of number of players. They've got the scholarship limits, but Dennis Gates has figured, hey, never said anything about how many walk-ons. So what he's done is he said, how about you come to Mizzou to these players, and you know what? Your scholarship is just going to be NIL money, basically. A donor is going to donate to the collective, and that's going to cover your scholarship. So you don't know the difference. It's just not an official NCAA scholarship. And hey, I think it's a loophole that'll probably be closed in the coming years, but for now, why not?
Yeah, load up on what you can get and bring whoever you can in. The trick to that, though, and the key to that is, one, making everybody happy, and two, finding the roles for each one of those players. And when we get into it, the schedule hits pretty hard pretty quickly, so it's going to be real interesting to see how he handles the roles for each one of these players on this team.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot for this, the starting five that we know. There isn't that much. There's a few different ways it could go, but let's start with the one thing that we do know. Starting point guard, the captain, Nick Honor, about as steady as they come. Just nails from the free throw line. Had some huge clutch shots down the stretch, most notably perhaps against Mississippi State in a game where they just slugged their way through it and escaped with a win. And he's steady. He is in control, and he takes care of the ball. One of the best assist turnover ratios in the country. And that's the type of guy you need kind of, being your floor general.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Probably the second person you could pencil in, at least for the foreseeable future, would be Noah Carter until someone establishes anything over him, as they do once the games start playing out. But he has the most experience on the floor as a forward for this team right now, outside of Connor Vanover, who we'll get to in a bit. But he knows the system, he's in the system, and they're going to be expecting a lot out of him, especially early on, leading this team and getting everybody into the rhythm of what Dennis Gates wants out of this team.
Yeah, kind of early on in conference play, Carter hit a little bit of a lull last year, but the last 10 games or so, and then into the SEC tournament and NCAA tournament, he was all over the place. So if Missouri is going to have a go-to guy in the similar type style of Kobe, not necessarily that level, but a go-to guy. I think Noah Carter is your first option to look. After that, David, it's kind of open to interpretation and experimentation and who does best at practice as far as filling out the rest of your starting five.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you before the video started, but I think at least in the initial game or two, I think you'll see Sean East start with Nick Honor. And one of the reasons why I say that is Gates has come out and said that he wants to see Nick Honor take more threes. And when you have Sean East out there on the floor running point with Nick Honor, that will allow him to move more freely and get into those positions where he can take those jump three shots.
And given the fact that Honor was, as Gates put it, almost selfless to a fault, that might catch some teams off guard. In particular, in the non-conference, say this Memphis game coming up real quick, as something where if Nick Honor jacks 4 or 5 threes, they may not be ready for it, just because there's not a whole lot of film aside from last year. There's a lot of different ways it could go. I'm expecting to see Connor Vanover as a starter. I think that's something where Missouri is going to want to establish themselves as having a front court presence. And, we all know rebounding was the Achilles heel of this team last year. What better way to kind of improve that than by adding a guy who's 7'5", right?
Right. And I think piggybacking off him, you're going to see a lot of Aiden Shaw too. He put on about 15 pounds of muscle, trying to fill in a little bit, if you will, so he can play the role. And I think you're going to see more out of him defensively, especially when it comes to rebounding.
Yeah, his offensive game was not really there, except for alley-oops, dunks, and putbacks, or just a random three every now and again. The defense, a lot of it was there until you got to the rebounding, as you mentioned, and just kind of the stuff where you got to outmuscle guys. He just, as a true freshman, didn't have the build for that yet. So that's the one aspect of his defense that I would look for being much better. Going back to East, I think it's interesting with him being a potential point guard with Honor, maybe moving over to being like a shooting guard type deal. I think part of this could depend on how the true freshman Anthony Robinson, how he develops, how he progresses, adjusts to the college game. If Robinson is, going out there and he's making some freshman mistakes or whatever, but it's clear that he's going to be a player and that he's figuring things out, I think that affords Dennis Gates the flexibility to use Honor and East in whatever capacity he wants. But if Robinson is struggling, I think Gates might want to put East and Honor out there together, but may feel he can't do it because he's got to hold East back potentially in case Honor gets in foul trouble or gets hurt or something of that nature. We saw it at times. I think Gates would like to do it more, but I think Robinson will be, and his progression as a true freshman will have an impact on that. I tell you one transfer that I'm really excited about is Tamar Bates. Tamar Bates is 6'5", 195, the transfer out of Indiana, okay, junior. He's from Kansas City, but on the wrong side. He's from Kansas City, Kansas. Consensus top 50 recruit when he came out of high school. And then just playing in Mike Woodson's offense at Indiana, it just didn't really click. There's some thought that the offense does not really showcase or emphasize his skill set. And playing in Dennis Gates' offense, there's reason to think that he could really take off. And it happened in flashes. He's got the talent to really take over at times. So perhaps kind of a transfer portal hidden gem.
Yeah, agreed. A couple other players to keep an eye on would be Trent Pierce coming in, 6'10", Again, we got to find a way to fill that role of Kobe, and they're going to be trying some different guys in those positions just to see what they have. And you got to work out. You can't necessarily rely on Aiden Shaw or Vanover, if you will. So you're going to see him in the rotation, I think, and I think you might see Jordan Butler, who's another 7-footer as well, coming in from time to time too. It's going to be really interesting to see those guys develop. Both of them are freshmen. I'm curious to see what kind of impact they'll have on the team as well.
And if you're talking it down low, this is without talking about the player that Gates has openly said multiple times is the most improved player on the team is Caleb Brown. So, he's 6'7", 245 on the roster. And that size, and if he's much more improved, more than anybody else, I'm curious to see what that means. Was he just that awful? Or is Caleb Brown is he going to be a factor? I think that's something that, particularly in some of these early blood donor non-conference games, I think we're going to find out.
And I'm wondering
if that just becomes an unexpected option.
And I'm wondering if it's just one of those things where the game finally started clicking for him.
Yeah.
He had to adjust to the pace, maybe had to build up his strength. And now that he's been in the system for a couple of years, it's just starting to click for him. So that could be a thing too.
Yeah. And when it comes to filling out this roster, one other transfer, well, I guess there's two guys that I really think could have an impact. The first one, 3-point shooting. Demoy Hodge was huge there. If there's one guy who's going to be a 3-point specialist, it's Caleb Grill, transfer from Iowa State, who, his game, he's known for 3-pointers and defense. So, yeah, I think there is an opportunity for him to really find a role. And maybe he's not a starter, but I think he'll have significant minutes either way. And he could start.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. What was who was the other one you were talking about?
Oh, yeah. So the other guy that came to mind for me was John Tanji, Colorado State. And when I saw his film, when I did the video for him transferring and all that, what jumped out to me was the athleticism. I think this is a guy who at times will be able to out-athlete whoever's defending him. And that's a great asset. Fits right in with what Dennis Gates is trying to do in terms of, a little bit of positionless basketball and just athletes who can go get them. Just oozes athleticism. So I think he can be a big factor and be a factor in the tempo. Because that's something you got to have guys who are ready to play a fast tempo like Gates wants to, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think he's going to be key in keeping the tempo pushed, honestly, as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
Now,
and,
go ahead.
I was going to say, there's one more that we haven't mentioned. Maybe we did, and I just can't remember. Kurt Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in, National Junior College Player of the Year. I'm interested to see what kind of impact he has coming up to Division I, seeing how that translates. And with all these players, quite honestly, Gates has his pick on what he wants to do. He can throw size at you. He can throw speed at you. He can throw shooters at you, if you will. So really how he utilizes his players is going to be really interesting, and the matchups he can create based off any team he plays is going to be key this year, because who knows which player he's going to throw at you, and they all have a different skill set.
Yeah, I know one thing that Gates has said is he wants this team to be at the top of the list for 3-pointers attempted. And think about East running the point with Honor and Grill on each on a wing, jacking up threes. Yeah,
Ugh.
that's very realistic.
One, you could put Connor Vanover and
Aiden
who
Shaw,
is it?
even.
Yeah, and Jordan Butler underneath the two
Yeah.
7-footers, uh, just a rebound and
Yep.
kick out. The other thing he could do, and I was telling you, I was saying this, he could potentially have a court, 4 guys 6'10" or taller, and then throw East out there as a point guard or something too if he wanted to go size.
Yeah.
just
With the sheer number of guys, I mean,
just
early in
let
the
that
season,
sink in.
we may see wholesale just hockey style line changes.
Takes you
Uh,
back
so,
takes you back to the Mike Anderson days.
oh gosh, yeah. Now, with this team, the the schedule is notably harder than last year. Okay, last year the first 7 games were all just pitiful opponents, and it was by design, just figuring out what Gates had. The entire team was brand new. This schedule is noticeably harder, especially early. Opening Monday against Arkansas Pine Bluff, but then second game of the season is a home game against the Memphis Tigers. That'll make for a fun weekend in town with the Vols football team coming on Saturday. But then 2 games later, true road game at Minnesota. And then you go down, and there's a few more kind of built-in wins, and then at Pittsburgh, and then versus Wichita State, and then the border war, and then neutral site Seton Hall, and then bragging rights. That's a heck of a 5-game stretch in the non-conference.
Definitely preparing you for conference season for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And if you can win even a couple of those early on, you could really get yourself on a roll.
Yeah.
And by that Kansas game, I expect them to have their roles ironed out probably. That could be
Yeah.
quite a doozy, even though it is at Kansas this year.
Yeah. I think the goal, I think if you look at since this series resumed, the first year it was stupid. It was a Conzo team. Last year, I think Gates, especially, and the players, they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. They just didn't. And they were not up to the moment. They just weren't ready. This year, I think they're going to have a better idea, but you know, playing in Lawrence against the number 1 team and everything that goes with playing in Lawrence, it's that's a tall task. Then you move into conference play, all right, and I'm just perusing the schedule here. Highlights at Kentucky, and then 2 games later, you're at Alabama. Those are your second and fourth games of the conference schedule. You're at A&M. Let's see. You do have your home and home against Arkansas, as usual, so that's good. Tennessee is at home. So that's a winnable game, although they will have revenge on the mind after last year. Vescovy and his 16th year of eligibility coming to town. There aren't really that many games that you look at on this schedule and you think, oh. At Lawrence against KU, of course.
That Illinois game is going to be a doozy this year too. I think they have
Yeah.
themselves a real powerful team this year as well. And then I have no idea, to be honest with you, what Pittsburgh has. Sometimes they're really good, sometimes they're not, but they are Big East, so they or ACC now, I guess.
Yeah.
So they could really
That's
put
true road game.
Yeah, they could put a really good team together too that you have to play. So you're looking at possibly 3 ranked games within like a week or so of each other.
Yeah, I think that's your key takeaway. It is a hard schedule compared to last year, at least, and I've seen some projections of 21-10. I think that might be a little optimistic, but with this schedule, 21-10 makes the NCAA tournament. I feel confident.
Especially if you win a couple of those early non-conference road games.
To
They'll
get
look
to
real.
21-10, I think you'd have to.
Yeah, and it would look real good on the resume too. So even losing a couple of games, I don't think it's going to hurt you too much.
Yeah. So whereas last year was more just stockpiling every win you can because you need it because the schedule wasn't there. This year, Missouri might be able to withstand losses a little easier because the strength of schedule, strength of record, it'll be there. So that's something to keep in mind. And so, David, real quick, for you, what's one key to the season for you?
Yeah, we could look at a couple of things, but I would say the key for me would be offensive or just rebounding in general, both offensive defensively. It was something they struggled with last year, and I think it finally came to bite them in the NCAA tournament. But you could see it in some of their higher level games that when shots didn't fall, it was usually just a one and done, and they're going back down the court. If they're going to continue with that mantra of shooting as many threes as you can, you have to rebound the ball so you can get second chance shots. And when you have a couple of 7-footers on the team, it's going to be key because you can get some of those and put them back for easy buckets, honestly. So if I had to say anything, consistent rebounding is the key for this season.
Yeah, I think that is the key. For the sake of variety, I'll say something else. And that's something else for me is having somebody who can be something of a go-to guy. It's not fair to ask anybody to be like Kobe Brown. I think I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. Kobe Brown was a first-round draft pick in the NBA draft. It's not fair to expect that from anybody, but Missouri needs somebody that it feels comfortable with when they need a basket. Noah Carter, Nick Honor, whoever. Get the ball to them and let them go to work. Something along those lines. For when no one else's shot is falling or things are going wrong, the other team's on a 9-0 run or whatever. They have to have that to be able to kind of stop the bleeding whenever that happens. Or just take control of a tight game.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Eric,
yeah.
all I know is it's going to be an interesting season. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, and we're going to see a lot of player development this year, I think.
The big thing entering this season, the one thing we do know that there is hope, as well as a new scoreboard and black seats.
Yeah, which is going to be really cool to see on TV, by the way.
Yes.
I am going to mention this, as you mentioned, hope. Dennis Gates is putting in the work on a recruiting trail. We have one of right now. It's a top 5 recruiting class, I believe, in the country for next season as well. So if they continue to show the success both on and off the court, we're going to have a really, really, really good squad for hopefully a long time. All I know is it's going to be fun to watch, and we're going to find out how good this team is real quick, possibly even on Friday. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing how the season goes, and we'll keep you updated on all things Mizzou basketball. So thank you for watching Under the Arc Sports.